right. Well, thank you all for choosing to spend your time here with me today. I'm so appreciative of you taking this time out. I am tremendously grateful and honored that you're here. I know what a commodity time is for us all. So the fact that you've chosen to sit by and listen, and what I look forward to is hoping to impart a few pearls for you. So thank you. Thank you for being here. This is a podcast dedicated to guiding listeners through the journey of overcoming overwhelm, exhaustion, and burnout. And I look forward to bringing through expert interviews and real stories and actionable strategies, opportunities so that we can together explore practical solutions for regaining control of your day, finding mental clarity, and helping you foster a holistic well being that's real and practical and meaningful for you. I'm Jessica De La Rosa. I am your host, and this is my podcast, Rise Above the Burnout. So, my background, as some of you already know, is I am a registered nurse, and I am also a certified wellness practitioner and life coach. And with me today is my amazing friend, Miss Caroline Anyadike. And I'll give her, in a moment, a chance to give us a little bit about herself. But before we go there, as we navigate through this journey together in today's episode, growing and learning, I'll invite you to share some of your questions and feedback in the comments section below for this episode and every episode moving forward. I'd love to be able to connect with you on social media. So go ahead and connect with me there. I'll leave my social media handles down below this video as well. So without further ado, I would love to introduce to you my friend Caroline. We're going to talk about wellness, self-care, and stress management and burnout. I think we'll also be able to maybe share some of our own experiences and stories about that. But welcome, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline, so much for being a part of this amazing new journey and chapter for Rise Above the Burnout.
Well, thank you for having me.
So happy to have you.
So, my name is Caroline, like Jessica said, and I work as a quality director at a local hospital. I wear multiple hats at this job. I'm
Yes, you do.
quality risk manager, educator, medical staff, patient safety officer, all of that rolled
Yes.
into one. And there's never a dull moment. I am a mother of a 12-year-old.
Boy, who
A
is a
boy.
handful of
He
its own.
keeps
Yeah.
me very, very, very busy.
Nice.
And I also take care of my mom. I share, duties with my husband and my siblings as we take care of my mom 24 hours. That's the latest addition
Yeah.
to my responsibilities since last year.
So I'm hearing so I just want to make sure that we're all really capturing everything you're juggling, right? So you're a mom to a 12-year-old boy, which in and of itself is a job, right?
Yes.
Because he's 12, he's going through his own life experience and progress, and
Yes.
you have to be there to help catch some of that and guide some of that, right?
Yes.
You've got your work, your job, that is your career. I know you from a few years now, and I know that you work in this healthcare field, and I know how demanding that is.
Yeah.
And as you said, you're wearing a lot of hats. You're doing that job alone. There's so many expectations of you in this really complex, very fast-paced industry.
Yes.
And then you're caring for your mother, who has experienced some health issues in the last couple years, and now really needs her children to support her in different ways, right? Being there for her and helping her through her day-to-day activities. And you're
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah.
So, and that's what's referred as the sandwich generation too, right? If you've heard
Yes.
that term before, right? The sandwich sandwich generation. Well, you're living it. You're
Yeah.
living the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Caroline and I have known each other since, 2019. And I know it's 2019 because that's the year that I came to work at the same hospital as you, Caroline, right? We
Yeah.
worked in that hospital in Los Angeles. And well, I was thinking about it and I realized as I was preparing for today's episode to talk with you, I realized in a couple of months, we will celebrate our 5-year friendship anniversary.
Yay!
So this is so cool. So it's so cool to be here with you doing this podcast. So over the years, Caroline have had our own journeys through burnout. You and I have talked a lot about self-care, stress management. What do we do? How did we come to realize, that we needed to really focus on our self-care? I'd like to start by diving into a couple of concepts. I want to talk about first, let's start with the importance of what wellness is, why it's important, why self-care is important, why stress management is important. And I hope to bring that all within context of how burnout sort of follows up to all of that. So with that said, let me start with this. What does wellness mean to you? What does wellness mean to you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a lot. Um, not having tension in my shoulders, be able to sleep well, feeling energized, thriving. Yeah, the energized and thriving.
And to be energized and thriving, right?
Mental clarity. Yeah.
It's funny for me, like I never uh well, up until a couple years ago, I never really thought about wellness. I never thought about the word wellness. I never
Mhm.
thought about what it might mean. I just never paid any attention to it up until a few years ago when I underwent my own stress journey. But um, yeah, wellness. The reason I asked what does wellness mean to you is because wellness means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? And I think that's one of the first points I wanted to bring up is when you hear the word wellness, when we all hear the word wellness, it's not this one thing. Wellness can mean something very different to all of us, right? For me, wellness means feeling happy when I feel happy, when I can experience joy. Uh, Really that's the essence of wellness to me. You said it's to feel less tension, right, in your shoulders. um and other people might define it differently too, but I think what's important for everyone to understand is that wellness is you define it. I will say that there's an association, a national association called the National Wellness Institute. They define wellness as when you're functioning optimally within your current environment. And what they're saying by saying that is what they mean is when you're functioning optimally at home with your child, Caroline, and at home taking care of your mom, and when you're functioning optimally at work too. So it's whatever environment that you're in, they define where are you feeling well within those areas. So whatever wellness means to you, are you feeling that when you're in those areas, right? Other one that I always like to point out too is self-care, the term self-care. And the reason I definitely want to just bring that up before we go on is self-care. Would you say that that term laid out? Do you feel like it's overused? Do you feel like,
No,
how
I
do
don't
you feel
think
about that word?
I don't think it's overused. I think it's a word that um something that was never really brought up like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think coming out of COVID and
Mm-hmm.
all of the things that went on with, being, in a pandemic, made everybody, kind of like aware of, we have to take care of ourselves. And, the things that I was able to do in the past, I never thought of it as wellness. I just thought of it as, me time or relaxing, venting, those types of things.
I ask that because sometimes when I'm talking to people, right? So as a life coach, I get to work with different women who have become so overwhelmed with stress. They're exhausted, right? They're exhausted. They've got the brain fog. They're overwhelmed. They just feel like they've lost control over their day. And I've been there, right, where I feel like the day is running me. I'm not running the day, right?
Mhm.
And when I've tried to bring up self-care to them, what are you doing for self-care? What's self-care? I've gotten an interesting reaction from a lot of people, and that is self-care. That's what is that? That's I don't have time for a massage. I don't have money for a massage.
Yeah, I think people equate
Yeah,
that
right?
to,
Like
yeah,
they hear the word self-care and it's like they go into these ideas of what they think self-care.
going to a spa.
Yeah, that's like number two. That's like the second thing I wanted to bring up here as well. What self-care really means, right? And we'll get into it some more as our conversation goes. But self-care really, again, can be whatever it is for you, right? Whatever it means to you, whatever it means to me. Um, it's not a one size fits all. Self-care is not a one size fits all. Self-care is about what have you heard the saying fills your cup,
Mhm.
right? Does it fill your cup? When we say fill your cup, is emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, do you feel recharged, refilled, rejuvenated? Because it's the concept is that when you feel recharged, refilled, rejuvenated in those areas, that you can show up and be your best for your son, for your mom, for your job,
Yeah.
right? But it's when that cup is running low with too little in it, you haven't replenished it because you've been giving and doing and doing and giving. That cup running so empty, it's very hard to show up optimally for yourself or for anybody else in any of these situations. So self-care is very unique to everyone. So to fill that cup is what does that look like for you? What will fill your cup for yourself? For me, for example, filling my cup, I do like to go outside. I love the outdoors. Whatever chance I get to pick up my daughter from school, I could drive, but I can also walk, and I typically choose walking because as long as I walk along this path, I get to notice certain things out in nature, like I'm a huge flowers fan. I love flowers. They make me happy. And so that's a cup filler for me. And so I purposefully go out and do that. But that's my version of self-care. So it's not necessarily the massage. I'll be honest with you, massages are not, while a lot of people have these misconceptions of what self-care is, massages are not for me really the funnest activity I can do to refill my cup. I'm one of those people that gets a little kind of uncomfortable in that scenario. So, how do you feel, Caroline? And in our conversations we've talked before, burnout.
Yeah.
We've talked about burnout. Um, when we talk about wellness or self-care, in your mind, how do you think that sort of helps you prevent burnout, overcome burnout? How do you find wellness and self-care play a part in that?
Like you said, it prevents burnout. Um, Depending on what I do for self-care, wow, that's a good question. Self-care grounds me
Mm-hmm.
and helps me to focus. So when I go to work or deal with my mom or my son, I'm grounded. I feel like I can handle whatever arrows are shot my way. You know what I'm saying? I can pivot.
Yeah.
Whereas if I don't participate in some aspect of self-care, I feel like I'm running and running fast but in place and getting nowhere,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my mind is scattered. I don't feel like I have my mental focus um you
Yeah.
know, spot on or pinpoint, you know?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I do know what you mean. You're right. I do know what you mean. I think that to your point, I think you explained it well. Wellness and self-care, right? When we're not self-caring, when we're not refilling the cup, you're running on empty oftentimes. And it's like you said, it's like sometimes you feel like you're running in place and getting nowhere. I've always called that for me, yes, same. And I've always referred to it as the hamster wheel. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll come home and hubby will ask me, "How was your day?" At work. And a pretty typical response for a very long time, for what I would tell him was, just another day running on the hamster wheel, getting nowhere. And I didn't feel like I could get organized, and I didn't feel like I could focus. I didn't feel like I had the mental clarity. Um, but what was also true of that time, for me, Caroline, was I wasn't doing the self-care practices. It was my thought that, I don't have time for self-care. I don't have time. My background, was, and still is, I just kind of referred to it as a was compared to what it is today because it looked very different back then. But I'm, also, by day, I work in corporate healthcare as well, as a leader. And it's a very demanding job, like yours, Caroline, right? And we've talked, you and I, about our jobs and the demands it places on us and how hard it can be sometimes to keep up with that. But what I wasn't doing before in the old Jessica days was doing the self-care. I wasn't refilling my cup. I wasn't doing things to feel joy. I wasn't doing things for me. I wasn't doing things that, were helping me recover, so that I could pivot and respond, during high stress moments at my job. And what ended up happening was, burnout is what happened. So that was sort of point number three I wanted to make here today was, when we're not mindful of our self-care practices, which again, we talked about, briefly that, self-care doesn't have to be these huge, long, periods of time. They don't have to be the hour-long massage or a vacation or whatever these luxury ideas are for self-care. They don't have to be those things, right? But when we don't do even the small things, burnout, is what happens. And burnout in and of itself is a point where you just, can't make decisions anymore. You're feeling withdrawn from or disengaged from the stuff that you love to do normally. You're not feeling as effective at your job or with many of your responsibilities. Um, and again, that's oftentimes the result of not self-caring, not doing things for yourself, to take care of yourself. So, Caroline, I remember, there was, and I can't remember, maybe was it 2020 or was it 2019 going into 2020? But I remember you went on your own journey with burnout, I think, right? There was a time when, you took some time off from work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And, do you mind, are you okay talking about that and
Sure. I
yeah,
mean,
sharing that story?
I was working at this very, and stressful job where I would walk through the hallways and I would ask myself, is this the day I'll have a stroke? You know?
Mm,
And it was just so stressful. And what ended up happening was I got phased out of my position.
mm,
They totally reintegrated my department with another department, and I got phased out. And I just remember telling the guy, thank you. I was just so happy. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? You're losing your job. And I was like, he just did not understand how happy I was to leave that place. And it was by any reason, any way. And yeah, and I actually was off of work for about a year and a few months.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was actually lovely.
Yeah.
My husband would say, don't get too comfortable. You'll be back to work. You've never been out of work before, but trust me, you'll have a job. And I just used that time to like focus on certain things that I wanted to do, which was write my novel. I completed my first draft of it, and just explore different career opportunities, and
Mhm.
did things around the house, and just, yeah, it was lovely. I think everybody should have a sabbatical.
That would be nice. That would be ideal.
Yeah, and it coincided with when we were in the pandemic and we had the shutdowns here in Los Angeles and
Mm.
California, I should say.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
my son was out of, had to attend school via Zoom. And, I was able to be there for him and do things, for myself, for my neighbors. We all came together
Mhm.
as a community, but it was really nice. It was really nice to
Oh,
just
that's
at least
good.
accomplish a couple of things of my dream.
Yeah.
And really I got to know myself
Mm, mhm.
and God better, because I wanted
Nice.
to strengthen that relationship as well. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I remember that time, and I'll share my story too, because I had hit a point of burnout as well. I know, Caroline, you described it as saying thank you. For me, the way it happened was, I mean, I didn't realize at the time that it was something to be thankful for, because I can see where the thankfulness came from when it happened with you. But at the time, for me, I was so lost. I couldn't even see maybe the blessing that it was when I had to take some time off from work as well. Um, but that's the thing. It's not like, right, listeners right now watching this or listening to this, who might be struggling with burnout right now, with the exhaustion and the sense of loss of control and lack of clarity and whatnot. They right, a lot of people might say, "Oh, I don't have the luxury of taking a year off." Right. And
Yeah,
that's so true for so many people. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I have any luxury to
I
take.
didn't have it either.
Yeah. No, no, none of us did. Please. Yes.
Right.
It's not that we're the housewives of California.
Right.
We're just the average woman, like, our listeners too. But um, that's the thing. And I think that's part of this message that I wanted to also drive through this podcast is, right, when we're dealing with our overwhelming stressors and we lack the self-care and we don't make time for it, life will force you to take that time out. I
Yes.
it's like, I've said it in a few of my social media posts, join me now for this conversation or wait for the breakdown, right? Join me now for this conversation. Let's get into some self-care or wait for the breakdown.
Yeah.
Meaning that life does have, like, your body and your mind and your spirit and your emotions can only go for so long under this stress and this exhaustion
Yeah.
before you finally you can't even decide what's for dinner, let alone function at your job.
Yes.
um yeah, my story, for me, I had a lot going on at one point, and I had too much going on at one point, and I also worked at this hospital that demanded just too much from me, and I care, right? Like you, Caroline, this is what happens is we care,
Mhm.
right? We care. So even in our work, you know aside from home, but because of course it happens at home, but even at work, we
Yeah.
pour a lot of ourselves into our jobs too, right? Because we care. We we give and we do and we help and we serve as resources, and we brand ourselves as these go-to women, right? A lot of people find themselves coming to us then a lot because we're just constantly helping and trying and being a resource and trying to produce and trying to be there for others. But what happens is we put ourselves and kind of paint ourselves into a corner, And then we kind of get stuck, right? And then everybody's coming to us and we're just giving at home and at work and at home and at work. And then we're not making the time to self-care. Well, so I had a lot going on at my job and personally. And I kept pushing through. I kept insisting that I could do it, that I'd be fine. And I think that's another pitfall too, is I think it's important for a lot of people to realize, a lot of women to realize that when you're stressed, I don't know, pushing through the stress. Well, this is just the way it is. Well, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
Well, right, right. Then this is what we do. This is
Yeah.
what we do, right?
Yeah.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, I'm just busy. Well, I'm just getting older, so I'm tired. Right. It's like we just keep finding reasons and excuses for why
Yeah.
we feel the way we do, right? And that's the danger. That's the slippery slope that we put ourselves on. And that's when, before I knew it, I had hit rock bottom. I couldn't decide what was for, I couldn't figure out what was for dinner without breaking down crying.
Mm.
Yeah, I couldn't, I dreaded the idea of driving myself home from work just because I didn't even care. Like, I didn't even care about traffic. I didn't care about any of it. Um, and I'll tell you, and Caroline, I know you know this part of my story, but I wanted to share it with people watching and listening. But if you remember, like, what my true rock bottom was, and that was when I came out of work, exhausted, as I was feeling just about every day, all the time. And I was dreading getting in that car and driving myself home because just even dealing with traffic, I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't care. I didn't want to make any decisions on the road. I wanted nothing to do with anything. And would you believe, right? Because to this day, I still can't believe this is what happened. I came out of work. Now, where I worked, that hospital where I worked at, which was the same hospital you worked at, you recall that um it was predominantly a mental health service,
Yes.
right? I mean, that was a big chunk of the service that hospital gave, right? So I was coming out, and if you remember, outside on one side of the building they had that fenced in area
Yeah.
where they would bring out the mental health patients to get some fresh air for the afternoon, right? Of course, you
Yeah.
don't want to keep them
They're
cooped
good.
up all day inside a hospital, right?
Yeah.
So we would get to bring them, so the nurses would get to bring them outside and hang out with them for a few minutes. Well, I was coming out of work and they were out there having that break. And it caught my attention because of a couple of reasons. The first thing that caught my attention was they were playing music, and I'm a music junkie. I love music. And there's this crew of patients and a nurse with them, and some of them are smiling, some of them are talking. I see a couple of them break out in laughter because look like maybe they told each other a joke or something. I see this one.
With them, huh?
What's that?
You wanted to hang out with them,
I
huh?
wanted to hang out with them.
Yeah.
I looked at them. One of them was like bopping his head along to the beat of the music, and I was like, and it just the scene just looked so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the equivalent of, probably, not that I've ever been in the desert, but what I would imagine walking through the desert would be like, and being dying of thirst, right? And then you see a glass of water in the distance.
Yeah.
That's what I would think it would feel. It was like the equivalent of that to me. And I wanted to go over there, and I just wanted to sit down and be there and have conversation with them and laugh and hang out and listen to music. I wanted to be a mental health patient in that moment. And that was a turning point for me. That was a turning point for me because what happened in that moment, as I was sort of pulled into that, like, it was like in a movie where everything slows down around me and I got sucked in.
Right.
um I hear like the cars and an ambulance siren go by, so it like kind of snapped me out of it, and it pulled me out of the moment.
Yeah.
And I realized the reality, and when that moment happened, Caroline, I felt this sense of angst in my chest, this ball like just form in my throat, and I started to cry. I started crying as I'm walking to the car, and so I speed up. I start walking faster to the car. And I
Right.
started thinking to myself, yeah, I was thinking to myself as I was walking to the car, I was thinking to myself, like, I want to go check myself in. I want to go be one of them. I want to go check myself in. And then I thought to myself, well, I work here. Number one, Jessica, you work here. You can't check yourself in here because everybody you work with is going to know then, like, right. So now, but that's funny, right? Because now here I am feeling ashamed of what I was feeling,
Right.
right? Mental health ashamed,
Yeah.
right? Like that's another big problem we could dive into in another episode was the
Yes. Yes.
stigma around mental health, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
and this is where we hear the slogan coming out where it's okay to not be okay, right? We're trying to normalize mental health, like we're
Right.
trying, right? Because right now in general and in that moment, I felt like I would have been embarrassed because like as if it's a weakness, right? As if I'm weak for wanting to have this breakdown, needing to have this breakdown. So yeah, so I drove home crying and like what the hell was wrong with me? I was thinking to myself, what the hell's wrong with me? Because I'm thinking to myself, um, I have a beautiful house. I live in a gorgeous neighborhood. I have adorable kids.
Career.
Yeah, this career. I have this
Yeah.
amazing career. I get paid
Yeah.
good money.
Family. A husband.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have what is considered the American dream, I guess,
Right.
right? Like I have this, right? So I'm like, but I wanted to just disappear. I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. I didn't want to make another decision for anybody. I didn't want to have to try to show up for anybody. I didn't want to do anything. And so I was pretty I was pretty emotional driving home. So I won't say that overnight anything changed. It took another several weeks, maybe even a couple of months, uh before I realized that I wasn't okay, that I wasn't okay. And I actually had to, at that point, I had to ask a doctor to give me a note to go out on a stress leave.
Yeah. Remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. And, and there was just a pill I had to swallow. You know, here's the thing, right? So I'm also a Latina woman, right? And in my culture as a Latina woman, first generation college graduate, family from the islands, right? From Puerto Rico and different upbringing for them than the opportunities they gave me, right? And so I have a lot to do. I have a lot to prove. I have a lot to grow, right? Because I have to succeed,
Yes.
right? And represent,
Yes.
right? So I've worked really hard in my lifetime for my career. So for me to have to go out on a stress leave and say I can't do it anymore, that was hard. That was really hard for me. Especially because I just constantly felt like I had to show up everywhere all the time for everybody. So for me to have to like
Yeah.
retreat back, right? And close the door and tell the world to leave me alone was a
And you
hard.
don't show up, like halfway. You show up all the way.
I do. I do.
Very
Hashtag
well
overachiever.
organized. Yeah. It's like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Hashtag overachiever, right? Used to be hashtag people pleaser, right? Which a lot of women kind of fall into that trap. But anyway, and so I think, while that was a really hard thing in my life to go through, I love using it as an example today of um when you don't make time to take care of yourself, when you don't make time to self-care, you life will force you to take a time out, whether you like it or not, whether it's convenient or not, whether the opportunity, whether you have the opportunity or not. We it wasn't when I went into that stress leave and I couldn't work, like, well, let me say this. So then after the stress leave, I went back to work, right? After a couple of months off, I went back to work. So it was only like 2 months that I took off. And then I went back to work. And 2 months for someone to recover from burnout, Caroline, is that's like spitting in the ocean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I went back because, I have bills to pay. I don't have the luxury, right, of taking time off. So, I went back and girl, after, you remember, after just
Yeah.
a couple of months back at work, I was like, I can't. I couldn't do it. I just was completely ineffective at work. My brain just needed a rest, right? And I ended up quitting my job, right? And
A lot of back and forth about that.
a lot of back and forth about that, right? It was a tremendously painful and hard decision to make
Yeah.
because I was walking away from this great career,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
money, excellent
Yeah.
money,
Yeah, exactly.
excellent money. And I had a beautiful household that my income was contributing to, right? Now, luckily for me, because it's not the case for everybody, but luckily for me, I had a spouse that I could lean on, right? Some women don't have a spouse to lean on and they're doing it on their own, right? And gosh, I mean, I salute those women because I don't know how I would have gotten through this episode in my life, if I didn't have someone I could lean on,
Yeah.
like my husband at that time. And so anyway, and it put a big burden. It put a big, huge burden on well, my whole family, my husband and my kids, because hubby had to pick up the slack financially, right, in order for me to come home and retreat and rest and recuperate. So he had to pick up the slack and he had to work a lot of extra to make the bills. And then the kids, it was a burden on the kids because I wasn't readily available for them, right? Because I was in this rest mode.
Yeah.
Um, and financially we couldn't give them all the stuff that we enjoy giving them, and the opportunities that we enjoy giving them. So, I hadn't planned on this. I never at this point in my life had given any thought to wellness, to self-care. I thought self-care was luxury stuff. I thought it was taking a vacation. I thought it was the life of housewives of insert city or state. You know what I mean? It's like I thought it was that kind of stuff, like the luxury stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really not, right? It's really like self-care can be 10 minutes a day,
Yeah.
right? It can be a journaling, it could be
Sit on
meditation,
your balcony. Yeah.
sitting on your balcony, drinking a cup of tea and taking in the sounds and the sight, right?
Yeah.
So I guess shifting gears a little bit then, Caroline, I think thank you for sharing your story too. Um I think we've touched on this, some of the misconceptions and the myths surrounding some of the concepts of self-care, wellness, and burnout. One of the other misconceptions I always love to be able to help people poke a hole through is a lot of people think wellness means some version of perfection. Like wellness, like you have to be perfectly happy to be well, like to experience a full wellness, holistic wellness, right? My life is perfect. Um, I practice healthy habits all the time, every day, right? And that's absolutely not true. One of my favorite phrases is progress over perfection,
Oh.
right? Progress over perfection,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, right. So it's just even the fact that you're trying, even the fact that today you got in a 10-minute wellness walk. That's progress, right? And that is what's to be celebrated, right?
Right. Right.
Um, Another misconception I often find, and tell me what you think of this, is do you find that self-care practices, well, I don't know. How do you feel well, first of all, what do you do for some self-care? What do you do? What is your self-care I don't want to say the word routine, but we'll say routine.
I wish I had a routine, but when I was younger, I used to love taking baths.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time, when I was like, even up to a few years ago, I would take a bath every Sunday. I mean, I'll take a
Mm.
shower every day, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
slow down and just relax in the tub. And that's
Nice.
something I would like to do again. But right now, it's just doing my nails and watching
Mm.
a mystery like Hercule Poirot or something Agatha Christie. I love it. I
Nice.
used to do it on Sundays until we changed up the routines, helping my mom, and I'm taking that back.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
with my nails or like I said, sitting on the balcony watering my tree and just sitting,
Oh,
breathing, fresh air.
yes.
Um, or even just lighting a candle
Mm.
in the evening, lights out, and just listening to the sounds.
Nice. And
Yeah.
how do you respond to yourself? How do you feel? How does it make you feel? How do you respond to yourself? If you do you ever go for any period of time? Like let's say the week goes by and you didn't have any self-care practice in any of those last 5 days.
Yeah.
How do you feel? How does that make you feel?
Um, like if it's just for 5 days, I'll feel restless and not focused.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if it's more than that, I can definitely feel a difference in my mental clarity.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. That's
almost
so
like
true.
my house reflects it. you
Right?
like whoosh and
Yes.
the mess, like chaotic, and it's just like you have erupted. But I feel like I said, not grounded. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a definitely a feeling of being like if I take that time for myself, like let's say a Sunday right before going back to work the next,
Mhm.
for the week, I feel more grounded. I feel like, okay, I can do this. That's
Mhm.
taking time, and I'm just focusing on my nails and the show. That's it.
Mm.
Nothing else. And my family knows not to disturb me at that point.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like I can conquer that week.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
that?
I can relate. I can relate. I have some of my self-care practices now and routines in place, and I feel the same way. If I go for so many days, like the weeks gone by, it washed away, and I didn't do my practice, I feel less grounded. I feel less focused. Right? I feel like I can't be as productive as I could be. Uh, one of the misconceptions around that is that I find a lot of clients I work with too they tend to beat themselves up too, though, when they don't stick to their self-care practices every day. Like, for example, some people have this idea that, well, journaling is an excellent, healthy practice. I love journaling. I'm a very pen and paper kind of girl. And a lot of people feel that, well, I'm going to commit to journaling as my self care practice, let's say, right? I'm just using journaling as an example. And so every day, every morning when I get up, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to journal, you know, whatever I'm feeling in my life at that time or whatever it is we want to journal. And so you start off strong with the first 3 or 4 days, right? And then day 5, day 6, they kind of fall off. They're not doing it. And then here's what comes. Then they internalize, they take this self beat up, because I suck. I didn't stick to this healthy routine and I was supposed to. So, meh, I give up, and then they give up and they get mad at themselves and now you do this negative self-talking and you know so that's another one, and that's a misconception I want to clear up too, is that you don't have to commit to the one thing. And Caroline, I think when you described your self-care practices, there's not that one thing you do all the
Right.
time. You mentioned a variety of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And that's what it is. It's self-care can be any mixed bag of things. The point is that you're making yourself feel good.
Mhm.
Um, Ideally every day you're doing something every day that will bring you a piece of joy, a sense of peace. Right? And it can be office, if you work in an office setting, go to YouTube, find a 10-minute yoga, right? Yoga session, and you can do office yoga. You can put on in the middle of your workday, take a 10-minute break, go outside, get out of the building, go outside and listen to your favoriteest of favorite kind of music, right? The kind that makes you feel powerful, right? Like, I don't know, reggaeton does a little something for me when I listen to it. Feel pretty superwoman when I listen to some reggaeton.
When you had the workshop, one of the ladies had mentioned tea time, and I just
Mm.
really love that idea of like taking some time out during the day to have tea time. I love that.
Love that.
Yeah,
Love that, right? I mean, just even the thought of it, right? Like
yeah,
taking some time off, like some time out in the middle of your day, go make yourself a cup of tea
yeah,
and walk outside with it,
yeah,
right? And just even that 10 minutes, just chilling. And then you come back and it's broken up your day a little bit, just 10 minutes, right? A lot of people will argue 10 minutes is a long time for me to take at work, right? I don't have time. I've got deadlines, deadlines, deadlines. But again, coming back to something we talked about earlier, if you don't pause and enjoy something in your day and fill that, cup within you more regularly, these deadlines you're trying to meet, these work products you're trying to produce aren't going to get the best of you. They're just going to get what's the left of you. And that's not what you want to produce, right? You want to produce quality work for yourself, right? So
yeah.
but yeah, self-care doesn't have to be the same thing every single day. Self-care can be a variety of things, right? One day it's a journaling, another day it's exercise, another day it's walking, another day it's playing with kids or with your animals, um, meditation, breathing work, breathing exercise,
Having a
sound
bath.
baths.
Yeah.
Sound baths are a good one. For anyone who's not familiar with what sound bath is, right? That's the practice where sound bath practitioners have these copper bowls,
Yeah, I would love
right?
to do that.
Ooh, that is nice. And I'll tell you where I experienced it in a moment. But yeah, that's nice. They're just doing something with the bowls that's sending these sounds out into the air. And actually that those sounds are evidence-based. Studies have shown that those sound waves that travel into the air are actually therapeutic for your brain waves, and it actually calms that down. And so it's oftentimes sound baths are oftentimes used during for therapy for mental health patients. So now where this is where let me tell you where I learned about sound baths. So I am also the chair of our wellness committee at my current place of work. And I am responsible for leading us through events and wellness activities every other month. We want our employees to experience wellness, a wellness practice, I should say, that they can learn to take and use in their everyday today. And so one month we did, I think we did it in November of last year. We invited a sound bath practitioner to come to the hospital. And he came into one of our conference rooms. He set up it was a beautiful setting. He had the carpet and the materials he just set up around him with the bowls and everything. And he had a small gong with him as well. And so for an hour, he played these bowls and he played these sounds. And what we had is our staff would come down and take a 10-minute break, 10 or 15-minute break. They would I would quietly escort them into the room because there were other people there, and they had the option. We provided blankets, and they had the option of laying down on the floor and listening, or they could sit in a chair, whatever made them comfortable. And I tell you, thus far it was the most popular event that we've had so far. And so I highly recommend sound baths if you've never tried one. And you can I
I've
believe you can
seen.
find that on YouTube. You can find some of those sounds on YouTube and you can sit and listen to them.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me try
Yeah,
that.
of course, there's nothing like the experience of seeing it in person,
Right.
but the opportunity in the middle of a busy, chaotic day, turn that on and just sit and just let it bathe over you. It's really nice. Well, Caroline, thank you. I think that we can start looking at wrapping up, and I think one of the ways I would like to wrap this up is to what would be, I guess, one piece of advice now, living your hectic life that you're living, juggling so many things, wearing so many hats at work, in your personal life. Um, What's one piece of advice you would give everyone for their self-care and own wellness? And it could be anything. What would you say to them?
I would say take care of yourself first. It's like a plane, like when you're about to crash and they say,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
you have to put the oxygen on yourself first before you take care of somebody
yes.
else.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, I mean, it's so important.
Yes, it's so true. Yeah, right. It's very human nature
Yeah,
to take the oxygen mask. If your plane's going down and I have my child next to
with
me
everything.
or my elderly parent or somebody I love next to me, I want to take that mask and I just want to put it on them, right? And here we are fussing, right? In the meantime, what's happening to me?
They're dying.
I'm dying because I'm not getting any oxygen. And here I am using up all my oxygen to help somebody.
Yeah,
Take the mask and put it on myself, like you just said, Caroline. Now I can get the oxygen. Now I can help
oh,
the other
yeah.
person. And that's what self-care is, right? Thank you. And my recommendation, I think, on that with self-care is, self-care is not a luxury. It's a basic fundamental human need. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you know that Maslow's hierarchy is this pyramid shaped concept where at the bottom of the pyramid are your basic survival needs. And you can progress up through that pyramid, that once you establish that bottom level, you can move to the next level of that pyramid. And that's like security. And then you can keep going up that pyramid to the very tippy top. And at the very tippy top, it says that once you've met all of these needs down here, you reach the peak of this pyramid, and that's called self-actualization. That's when you are, to say it in the simplest way, living your best life, right? And I think that it's often the misconception that self-care lives up at the peak, when the truth is, the reality is that self-care is actually at the fundamental level of that pyramid. And instead of doing your day-to-day basic survival and think that when you make it, when you have all the money, when you have all the time, then I'll get the massages, go on the trips, do all the self-care.
Mhm.
No, you got to flip that around. Take the self-care and put it at the bottom of that pyramid. And it's fundamental. You need self-care as much as you need food and water. It's at the same level, right? So that's my sort of takeaway for everyone. So with that said, Caroline, I am so appreciative of you taking the time out to do this with me. I so appreciate it.
Fun.
I love you for it. Thank you. And you guys all, please tune in for future episodes in which I'll continue to cover other topics around practical self-care. I look forward to bringing you expert opinions and other great conversations around these topics. I'd like you to be able to hear other people's versions of self-care. If you have any questions, comments, you'd like to know more about a particular topic, please drop it in the comments below. If you hit like and subscribe, that will tremendously help this podcast do well. And in fact, will allow me to bring you some expert guests without any charge when we all band together in a community like this. So do check out in the notes below the handles to my social media. Also, as well, if you'd like to subscribe to the weekly newsletter, I've left that link there for you. That's jessicahealthandlifecoach.com/subscribe. In that newsletter, you'll get weekly tidbits about more practical self-care tips. I'll give you free tools and resources. You'll be the first to hear of any major announcements as new products come out or programs come out and opportunities, as well as you'll always receive a summary of that week's podcast so that if you don't have the opportunity to listen because it's been such a busy week for you, I'll have a nice summary in there for you so you don't miss anything. So again, if you'd like to make sure you get all of that, that's jessicahealthandlifecoach.com/subscribe. All right. With that said, Caroline, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And don't forget to take care of yourself, which I think you're doing a wonderful job at anyway. So you are amazing. I love you. Thank you, Caroline.